Howdy folks. In this video we're going to be building a time intelligence inspector inside of Power BI. So what in the world is a time intelligence inspector and why in the world would you want to build one? Well, let's go look at our problem. I'm going to come over here to this sheet right here. And here we've got a pretty simple table where we've got the year and the month, and we've got the total sales. We've also got this total sales YTD measure on here, right? And if you look at the numbers, sure enough, it seems to be calculating the year-to-date sales for each one of these months. Now that's great, but one of the problems that you have with DAX in general, and time intelligence in particular, is that when you create these measures, right, let me go pop open the measure. Here's my year-to-date measure. You go through all this stuff, right? You build this new calendar table that says, these are the days that I should be looking at for total sales, right? So rather than just being May of 2016, it's January through May of 2016. That's what this bit of my formula is doing right here. And so I create that calendar table, and I say, go calculate total sales as if we're looking at those days. However, I don't have much insight into what is actually in those days. I don't have much confidence that these are the correct days. I mean, what I could do is I could try it and see if they seem to work out, but I don't really know what's in there. So what I would like to be able to do is inspect this calendar and say, hey, what's the first day of this calendar? What's the last day of the calendar? How many days are in the calendar? And that could give me some confidence that my time intelligence measure is considering the correct days, okay? So what does that look like? Well, first off, you have to go create an inspector measure, which I've already done. I'll walk you through building it here in a second. But the way it works is, if you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm just going to build, I just finished building this YTD measure, I want a little more confidence that it's working correctly. What I'll do here is, rather than calculating total sales, looking at my year-to-date calendar, I'm going to calculate the inspector as if I'm looking at my year-to-date calendar, right? And what it does, when I click on it, is rather than just showing me the total sales, what it does is it inspects this calendar table and says, what's the first day, what's the last day, and how many days are in the calendar table, right? And this is really helpful, because to me, I could say, all right, if I'm trying to be thinking about year-to-date, let's go just pick a date, like August of 2016. Well, what days should be in August of 2016? Well, it should be the 1st of January 2016 through the 31st of August 2016. That's about 244 days. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. I could go just kind of spot check another one. Hey, March of 2017. What's in there? Oh, it's the 1st of January 2017 through the 31st of March 2017. Yep, that is exactly what I would expect for a year-to-date calculation. Furthermore, and this is where it gets tricky with DAX, is you have to start thinking about how these roll-ups are going to behave. So I say, okay, total sales YTD for all up of 2017. Well, that's the 1st through the 31st of 2017. 365 days. Well, that also sounds right, okay? So all in all, this is sort of working okay, right? Also of interest, if we look down here at the total, it goes from the 1st of January 2016 through the 31st of December 2016, even though the last year is 2018. Now that's this is an example of something that if you just had the regular old YTD number on here, you might just blow on past this, or you might see the number and think to yourself, gosh, I have no idea how that is working, but I don't even know how to start thinking about it. This inspector gives you a hint. It says, all right, I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with it, but I will tell you what days you're currently looking at with the time intelligence measure that you're creating, okay? So I'm not going to solve this problem. Maybe I'll leave that to another video. What I really want to do is show you how to make this time intelligence measure right here, right? So we can work with. Okay, first off, let me turn this back the way it was, all right? So I'm going to twirl this open. So rather than being calculating the inspector YTD, we're going to calculate the total sales YTD. Okay, well, unfortunately, it strips out some of the formatting information, but that's okay. We can put that back real quick. Let's set that to, come on. Set that to currency. Come on. And DF. Set that to currency. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Okay, well, let's get that out of the way. That's silly. Okay, so let's go ahead and build our inspector measure, right? So if we, to build the inspector measure, it's pretty darn simple. What I'm going to do is I created a separate bin for my inspectors. You can have them in the same table as all your other measures. You can kind of put them wherever you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and take my twirl this guy open. I've already got the inspector that I built. Let's build a new one. So I'm going to right click on this table click new measure. And I'm just going to call this new inspector. All right, call it whatever you want. Okay. So this inspector, it's going to get a couple variables first, right? You don't have to do it this way, but I think it's a lot easier to read. So I'm going to create some variables. My first one is the first date in the calendar table that we're looking at. So let's call this v first date, right? And that's simple. That's just the minimum of the, dim date column, right? So it's just the minimum of the date column in my calendar table. Cool. Okay, that was easy. Var, we want the last date, v last date. Okay, well, what is this? Well, you can sort of probably guess. This is the max of the date column. So go get the last date, right? Right, there we go. Line those guys up, make it a little easier to read. Cool, okay. Now we want to know how many days are on the calendar table. So let's just call this num days, right? And I could subtract the first date from the last date and add 1. What I'm going to do instead, just because, I don't know, no particular reason, just to show you that you can do it a different way, I'm going to go count the number of rows in my date table, right? So you might be saying to yourself, hey, Brian, aren't you just calculating the minimum date, the maximum date, the number of days, just sort of in general? Well, yes. If I were to take this inspector measure and not put it inside of my year-to-date measure, but just throw it out here, I would just be getting, January 1st through the 31st of January, and that would be not interesting. But because I'm using it in that calculate in my total sales YTD, that's why we're getting not the minimum regular date and the maximum regular date, but the minimum regular date, but the minimum year-to-date date and the maximum year-to-date date, right? That's how that's working. Okay, let's line these guys up. Okay. So I've got my first date, I've got my last date, I've got my number of days. The last thing I'm going to need is I'm going to get a formatting string in here. So I'm just going to call this vDate format. So what's going to happen is I'm going to use this function here in a second called format, which takes a date and it formats it as text. And so we're going to decide how we want to format it. So I think what I came up with that worked pretty well is we're going to do dd mmm yyyy, right? Just like that. And that's going to be our date format. So that's going to be, if it's like the 3rd of the month, it'll be 03. And if it's February, it'll be FEB. And if it's 2017, it'll be, 2017, right? That's what that means right there. Okay, now that we've got that, we can go ahead and start building our thing, right? So we're going to return. What are we actually going to build? Well, we're going to format. We're going to format our first date, and we're going to format it with our formatting string, our date format right there. Okay, so we're going to get the first date and format it like that, make it look like that, okay? Then when you're done, go ahead and add a line break. So to add a line break, we're going to do unicar 10. That's the way to get a line break in your DAX measure if you need one, right? Goes against the 10th unicar variable, or number, I guess, or character, more accurately, which is the line break, right? So we get the first date, we format it like that, we add a line break, then we get the second date, format or I should say the last date, and we're gonna format it with the date format we had before. I'm gonna go ahead and add a space just to line those guys up, okay? And now, I'm not gonna add another line break. What I'm gonna add is just a space, and I guess maybe an X. That might look pretty good. And the number of days. In fact, yeah, we'll just leave it just like that. We could put a formatting string around this too, and if we think we're going to have more than a couple thousand days, that might be useful. But I think for now, this will be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Okay, and so now I should be able to take my new inspector and just drag it right here onto the table. So let's click on the table, take my new inspector and just drag it right there, see if it looks good. Yep, indeed. So if I'm using the new inspector not inside of year-to-date, but just by itself, it goes ahead and tells me, all right, for this cell right here in March of 2016, that goes from the 1st of March of 2016 through the 31st of March of 2016, and that's 31 days. But if I now go over to my total sales YTD, let me turn this guy off. If I go to total sales YTD, and rather than getting the total sales as if we're looking at these days right here, we're going to get the inspector as if we're looking at those days right there. Inspector, right? And there we go, just like that. Okay, so it should look pretty good. You know what, just because I can't help myself, I'm going to actually add a little bit of a formatting string to this guy right here in case we get up to 1,000. You don't have to know how this works, but if you're building this at home, I wanted want it to work for you in a variety of situations. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my new inspector, and here where it says vnum days, I'm going to do format, right? Number of days, that's correct. The formatting string I'm going to use is not the this date formatting string because we're formatting a number. What I'm going to use is just my sort of standard Excel format. So I believe it's, oops, encapsulate that in a string. So it should be pound, comma, pound, pound, 0, and that's it. Okay. So what this means, if you're familiar with Excel, you know this maybe pretty well. Always show the first order of magnitude. So even if the number is 0, always show like a 0, right? Then you know, show tens and hundreds and thousands as needed, and use a thousand separator. So let's see if this doesn't break it. Nope, works just fine. Okay, perfect. And that it's as easy as that. So now you can use this inspector and any number of time intelligence functions that you're using to go try and figure out, you know, is the thing that I'm going for, the year to date or the previous month or the year over year, is it generating the correct table of days to work with, which should give you a lot more confidence that your time intelligence measure is indeed working as you would expect. Okay, well, I do hope that was helpful, and I will see you next video.